My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Srisangan, Guru Piran Neo, fellow Nyanis. Today I'm going to speak about Mahan's contribution to mankind, particularly in commemoration of Mahan's 125th birthday celebration. This is a lecture I gave in India um, last week on the 2nd of May. So I thought, I will share with you my discovery and my experience of practicing this great Mahan's teaching. So what I'm going to cover is the biography of Mahan, particularly, how he started this journey. And this is very important because it also helps us to relook at our own, way of life and our own journey. And I want to spend some time on um, talking about this great master that lived in the 20th century and the essential concepts of, the universe, God, and the self. And particularly, he condensed this into what we call the I God philosophy. And I'll touch on the essential concepts of this I God philosophy. Then I'm going to speak about the uniqueness of Mahan's meditation method and what are the benefits of this method and how the method is unique in his own way of unlocking the power within all of us and the benefits. And then I'll speak about the benefits of the I God philosophy and the meditation, and most importantly, the kind of qualities that one, are able to nurture as they practice this meditation. Personally, I've been practicing, I've known Mahan for as far as I can remember, particularly at the age of 3 years old, when, a memory of a recognition and consciousness of a person becomes more and more explicit. And I remember this great Mahan's picture in our home at the age of 3 years old. And I was quite fortunate that, Mahan lived with us, whenever we visited Malaysia. And my first recognition of seeing this great master was in 1969, which I'll speak about, at the age of 5 years old. And subsequently, the later years, I had a little bit more deeper appreciation, understanding, awareness, and also greater, closer, relationship with him as a grandfather and my father's guru. So I want to today, speak about this great master and how it has transformed and shaped my worldview and my way of life. So bear with me today, and I'm going to highlight why, for me, he's one of the greatest, Mahan or spiritual leader or a scientist that, made a significant difference to humanity. So I'm going to touch on his biography first. But before I start that, one of the uniqueness of this great Mahan is he did not take a very dogmatic approach to spirituality. And I remember when I started reading his book, I found it was very different from many other spiritual teachings. Many of the spiritual teachings were, kind of caught up in mysticism and so on. But this Mahan's teaching was very different. There was a lot of science in a very systematic and logical way of explaining the universe, the concept of God, and the concept of self. And he shows how they all unify as one. And I remember Swamiji telling us and many youngsters, and including myself, he says that um, Study science and practice meditation, and you will discover the spark of God and the universe in you. And it's very interesting that, Mahan, when he was in our home, uh, in the morning, when he has some time, he will sit down and refer to some of the encyclopedias and scientific books that were in my father's library. And we used to refer to that, and Swamiji used to refer to these books, and I have pictures of that, Swamiji looking at some of the scientific books. And I remember Swamiji telling us, look at this. This is what I have explained in my I God book. And this is why the universe is like this. This is how evolution was. And this is how the relationship between us, the universe. So he was explaining that the I God philosophy that he was speaking about is anchored on very sound scientific reasoning and logical reasoning. And he used to tell us, study science, and it gives you that unbiased perspective, to, you know, use your mind in a deeper way to understand the secrets of this universe. And he says that if you use this knowledge really well, you'd be able to discover this concept of God and also the universe and the relationship between you, God, and the universe. And that actually set in my mind at a very early age when I was a teenager studying in high school. And that kept percolating, that he kept saying, study science and practice meditation, you'll discover. And that pushed me to study science and mathematics and to become a scientist. And part of that journey is actually to have greater appreciation of science and spirituality. And what was really fascinating in this journey is that uh, sometimes science is seen as separate from spirituality, but this Mahan actually brought the two together for me, in the sense that he explained to me how to live a enlightened life. One needs to spiritualize science and scientify spirituality, which is a profound statement, to spiritualize science and scientify spirituality. So you bring the two together to reveal the truth of this universe, God, and our own personality or conscious state. With that lens, I'm going to take you through this great master. For me, it's one of the greatest scientists, philosopher, Mahan, a social reformer, and many things that, if one understands his life story and his life journey and incorporate that, you see that there's a transformation that happens in all of us. So let me take you through this biography of this great saint and great, thinker. He was actually born in South India, this um, place on 2nd of May in 1900 in a place called Kansapuram in the Ramanad district in South India. Born to a respectable family, but they were not very wealthy, but had enough to look after themselves. And of course, in the family, coming from a very religious family, he was taught various religious practices and so on. And he was quite a very studious student, going intensively in the practice. And it was said that he would be one of the first that go into the place of worship and the last one to leave the place of worship. And he used to say that he often does that so that he realized that God comes or divinity comes when nobody is around. So he thought that coming early before everybody came, he could get glimpses of this divinity. And perhaps maybe when everybody leaves, as he's leaving, he'd be able to catch the glimpse of this divinity. And this was in his mind, in the early stages of his life. And he had a lot of questions, a lot of profound interest in understanding where we all came from, divinity, the universe, and so on. And at the age of, 11, something profound happened. That is the period where there was a coronation of the king. And I went back and did a little bit more research and saw that the king was, during the coronation, he was visiting all the empire, and he was aboard this ship called RMS Medina on bound to visit the Indian Empire. And there was a big celebration because the king was, coronated, and he was visiting, and people are celebrating. And in that exuberance of celebration, Swamiji, at the age of 11 years old, was quite curious of this celebration and very inquisitive. And he asked this very elderly person, why was this celebration for, and why is it so grand? You have to remember that he comes from a not a very affluent family. So this celebrations become a major event in his town. So, and this elderly person said that, this is the great person who rules the empire, and that's why we are celebrating, this event. So Swamiji was, curious of why this celebration for this particular person. And then Swamiji asked, is there anybody greater than this person? And the person said, yes, there is someone far greater than this person, and that person is God. And Mahan then asked this question, can I see this person called God? And this elderly person was quite curious and said, oh, very interesting question. And he said, yes, you can, if you have faith in yourself and God. And this is where Mahan's search for that God and the self, he started reflecting at the age of 11 years old. Very interesting. We see that, 11-year-old, person asking this very deep questions on God and, what is greater than this. Today, you see that an 11-year-old kid would probably, either look at TikTok or be online or do something else other than asking more profound questions. Far less somebody who's 20 or 21 or 30 years old, they'd be so busy with their mobile phones. And during, of course, Mahan's time, there was no mobile phones, but they had other things to distract. But he was so attentive and his mind was so deep in asking very deep and profound questions. At the age of 11 years old, he was asking this question, and this question kept percolating in his mind for many, many years. And of course, he went on to work as a trader. He went to Rangoon. He went to started thinking about it, still going to his place of worship. And during this period, very interestingly, there was an elderly man that took notice of Swamiji coming to the place of worship, very, very attentive, very, very diligent in his prayers. And he then became very interested in Swamiji, and he asked him, oh, you are very interested in this practice. And they became very close. And Swamiji said how they became very close, that he started buying him food, and the elderly person was buying Swamiji food and so on. And interestingly, Swamiji had a lot of conversation about God, the universe, life, and so on. And one fine day, he asked, I'm searching for this and I'm still cannot find it. And very interestingly, on the 7th of January 1938, this elderly person said, I will show you what you're searching for, and how to awaken the spark of the divinity. And he showed him a particular initiation technique that suddenly Swamiji felt a force that within him was awakened. And Swamiji did say that, he dreamt about this event, sometime back in 1930, uh, and uh, and this event took place in 1938. So in 19 it took about 8 years before this. But what was really curious for me is that why did Swamiji acquire this knowledge? And it goes back to the 11-year-old boy that asked this question and pursued this question in his mind, intensively. And this is one of the lessons that I learned, that in whatever we do, if we are persistent and have the perseverance and, you know, have that patience and more importantly, the passion to discover, the guru or the teacher or the divinity will show up, right? So one needs to be intensive. And this is one of the lessons that I learned from Mahan. And so this elderly person showed him this way, and Swamiji held on to it, and he continued this, and he developed so fast. And he asked this guru all these experiences, and the guru said, "Look, you go figure it out yourself." But what is really interesting is normally when a guru gives this initiation, he'll say, "Look, don't teach anybody; just use it for yourself and select people and give, because this knowledge could be used in different ways." But he didn't, for some reason, he didn't ask Swamiji a promise not to give it to everybody, but he gave it. And then after that, he told Swamiji, just give this knowledge to the selected people, and not to everybody. Mahan felt something very interesting, and this is the second lesson that I learned from Mahan, was that the first lesson was that he had this question at an early age, and he pursued it intensively until 1938. The second lesson I learned from Mahan is that he was searching for so many years for this knowledge. The thirst was so intensive. And now that he got something, he wanted to share this liberally to everybody. And not everybody will do this. Often they use it for themselves or, for whatever reason. But this Mahan wanted to give it to everybody. And he told his guru that I would want to give it to everybody. Why should they be suffering for so long for this knowledge? And the guru already has given him that initiation and he cannot take it back. So he said, never mind, do what you think is right. And the guru and the disciple parted ways, and the guru knew that he will take it in his own way. And that's exactly what Swamiji did. And he got this vibration and he started intensifying his research on, my guru gave me this, and how do I impart this to everyone? And in Mahan's time, this awakening of the Kundalini, many people spoke about it. Many of the knowledge is very theoretical, or you've got to do certain rituals. So he says, how can I do it and give it to everybody, irrespective of their race and religions and the way of life and so on? So he had to think really hard. He says, I went through a very difficult period to get this knowledge. I was in a particular faith, but I want to give it to people of all different faiths and background. So this is where he started intensifying his research, right? So the second thing is that while he wanted to give it to everybody, the third important lesson is that he had that compassion that people should not suffer like him to get this knowledge. So he had that compassionate feeling, wanting to give this liberally, and that's the third important quality. And the fourth important quality is compassion alone is not enough, but that intensifying that research and acquiring the knowledge to simplify things easily so that everybody can get access to. And this is the uniqueness of this great man. So he actually transformed his body and mind into a laboratory to experiment the different things and find different ways, simple ways to be able to impart this knowledge, right? And you see that he wanted to give it to everybody. He wanted to give it to people of different races, religion, rich or poor, or men or women. He wanted to give it liberally to everyone. He was in that joyful state. And what happened, interestingly, is that after many months, he started intensifying, and people started observing the glow in him, that tejas in him. Somebody said, "Hey, you look like a guru." and he looked and he said, "Yes, I am a guru." And at that point, Swamiji realized there was a change in him. People are noticing that change. He stopped all his job and profession and he returned back to India. And he made a commitment that he's going to take this knowledge to everyone, irrespective of what the circumstances is. Can you imagine? He was he was a trader and he gave up everything and went into poverty to be able to discover this knowledge, to improvise this knowledge, to make it simple, to impart this. And he struggled. He was literally very, very poor. And if you read the history, he shows that, they lived on very, very little money. He had a wife and, he had a first child who passed away. And then he had a second daughter who had many children. So, and then in 1942, Mahan then established, he realized that he's got this knowledge, he wanted to impart this knowledge in a more structured and systematic way. And he established the Universal Peace Sanctuary in India. And subsequently, what he did was that now he says, I want to not just, people within my own township and, India, I want to impart this knowledge to everyone. And he started his journey there. So interestingly, the fifth lesson is that, that research helped him to discover this knowledge. And once he discovered, he said, I want to give it to everybody across the country. So again, that liberal mindset, that's what we call a jnana vallal, the one who acquired the knowledge and liberally gives it to everybody. Today, we see that people have to pay lots of money to acquire this knowledge, but this Mahan has given this knowledge liberally, and that tradition still continues in Mahan's sabais in India and in Malaysia. So he traveled across the globe giving lectures. He traveled to Southeast Asia, to Malaya at that time, now Malaysia and Singapore. He went to East Asia, he went to the Middle East, he went to North America, and he also went to Europe, parts of Europe. And he traveled, and here are some of the pictures where large crowds came, and he was teaching liberally this knowledge to everyone. And the crowds were really fascinated with his way of life, the philosophy, and more importantly, the Diksha, the Kundalini initiation process that has no words, no sound. And this is very unique about this practice. In most places, to awaken this, you have to chant something or, and so on. But this Mahan, through his research and intensity, he was able to awaken this vibration and this give people that experience without them chanting anything. No, and that's why he always says that this is the mantra without words nor sound. That in itself is a major breakthrough for this great Mahan. Most of the scriptures will talk about, yes, awakening the Kundalini, there are different mantras, but here it's a very simple, anyone can practice. So he went on around the world lecturing to everyone. Here are some of the pictures. People of all walks of life came to him. The poor, the merchants, the rich, the scientists, the teachers, a whole host of people that came out and wanted to learn from him. Here again, some of the lectures that were made in Malaya, at that time, you can see the flag of the Union Jack there. He went to the Middle East, and we have the Sabai in Singapore, Upper Serangoon Road Sabai, and I visited there when Mahan was there. Here again, visiting UK, and you see some of the pictures of various people. Some of them were, yogis and, people from other religious orders and spiritual practice came to acquire this knowledge from this great Mahan. Here again, he visited many places. He went to the Taj Mahal, and he traveled around the world, to impart this knowledge. Even though, he spoke Urdu and Tamil, but he was able to travel around different parts of the world, imparting this knowledge, even though he didn't understand the language. Remember, this meditation does not require language nor a kind of words to write. He showed how to awaken this, and I'll show you some of the kind of unique way that he has taught. He also visited Malaya, before independence. It was called Malaya, that both Singapore and Malaysia, but in after 63, Malaysia and Singapore. Mahan visited, this region several times, 53, 57, 58, 1962, 63, and then 1969, there was a brief, short, very, very short visit. And that's the time when I uh, personally have seen him. I was about 5 years old. And in 1976, Swamiji came back to Malaysia, to Singapore and Malaysia. And 1980 was his last journey to Southeast Asia before he attained Mahasamadhi on the 7th of January 1981, which happened to be the birthday of Guru Piran Sivasankar. So I'm going to take you through now some of the visits in Malaysia. And here are some of the photographs. One of the photographs, Mahan arriving in the KL Sabah in 1976, with disciples, of different walks of life, children, people from the rural areas, people from the town, monks, that were very fascinated with this great saint's way of discovery of the self and also the practice of meditation. Here, these are pictures taken in Singapore. And here is a picture that Mahan giving a speech. I remember this very clearly, and I remember the speech very, very clearly where he spoke on Merdeka Day, our Independence Day of Malaysia, on the 31st of August 1980. And he mentioned in this speech very, very clearly that the next 5 years, he will be back in thoughts and in spirit. And of course, in 1981, he attained Mahasamadhi. And even after he attained Mahasamadhi, his spirit and his words and his practice and his spark of the Kundalini still is fired upon. Is ignited in many, many disciples. And we saw that in all the birthdays that we celebrate, and recently in Chennai, many, many people came. So here again, I remember the 1980 birthday where many people showered flowers to this great Mahan. Picture of him cutting the 80th birthday and having meals with disciples. Here are pictures that Mahan was, finished his journey in Malaysia, and he's waiting to go to the airport. And the picture on the right-hand side is Mahan walking, 80 years old, alone with his bag to the airport. Those days, you have to walk on the tarmac to the aeroplane. And what is really unique about this picture that really was very touching was that at 80 years old, he traveled alone. He carried his own bag, and made that journey. And I remember him telling that, this journey, while you meet many people, the journey is the connection between you and yourself. You should never be dependent on anyone except yourself. And that is what this picture, uh, highlighted to me, that, that independence and self-sustaining power. Even though 80 years old, he traveled on his own. But today, of course, you see, many people have a lot of entourage and so on. But this is a lesson that I learned from this great master. So this is the kind of journey that he had, as a person. But I want to then speak about the philosophy that he left, which is so profound. And I remember him telling that, study science and you'll understand this universe and you'll understand my philosophy. Of course, in the early days, I struggled with understanding this concept. And you'll see in Mahan's book, he spoke about, Irul or darkness. He spoke about concept of God. He spoke about the universe. In the early days, it was very difficult. But I caught on to this idea that he says learn science, and I saw him at that age of 76 and 80, looking through and telling us many things that became a treasure for me of what this great Mahan. So even though he was a Mahan, he was continuously learning and adapting. And I remember that he says study science, and that's exactly what I did. And as I was in university, studying science, doing mathematics and physics and quantum mechanics and so on, and fortunately, I was in a university where the science is very intensive. There were telescopes, and astronomy was very big. And I remember Swamiji talking about the universe and so on. He often, in the night, he will be gazing at the sky, and so that ignited my interest in understanding the universe. And as I was going through the university journey, I was looking at the scientific work, but also looking at Mahan's teachings simultaneously. And I started seeing a convergence in his philosophy and the scientific reasoning of our universe, and the concept of God, and also our own self. And as I started taking this journey as a student in the university, I was also a student of Mahan that was trying to discover, I'm being a student of universality, understanding the universe. And then the concept of, as this journey was going, the concept and the meditation intensified, the concept of Irul and the nothingness started becoming more and more clearer. Initially, it is very difficult to understand. And I said, how do I, as Mahan, made this abstract concept and the meditation so difficult, which was very difficult, but he made it very simple. How do I put this words that is put in simple pictorial form? And that's what the endeavor is that over the many years I've been grappling with. But here it is, as the journey was going, understanding the scientific reasoning, understanding Mahan's teachings became much more clear. So then he spoke about, when he says the nothingness, when he spoke about Irul, the concept of nothingness, it doesn't mean there is nothing. What he was telling us is that it's the no thing. You see, thing means matter and energy. That is our universe, that is, everything is matter and energy. But he was talking about another substratum that is got neither matter nor energy. And this is what he was speaking. And I say, wow, this is really fascinating. He was speaking about something that the science and others were speaking about. So this no thing, no matter and energy concept that he was speaking about. And what is really interesting is that that means he's differentiating between this substratum and our universe. This universe, which has got no matter and energy, but also time. Time is really important for our universe. And what is really interesting is that he's speaking about a substratum which time was not present. Wow, this is very interesting. So when I was studying science, time was drives everything in our universe. What if there was no time? A period or a substratum that's not touched by time. If there was no time, then past and present would not be there. All we have is, the state of, can you imagine living where there is no time? That means birth and death is not present. Change is not present. Wow, this is really fascinating. So everything that we live in has got matter, energy, and time, and we can experience that with our body. But is there something that within us that is neither matter nor energy and not touched by time? And this is what he was profoundly thinking about. If we can experience this, that means that substratum, which is neither matter and transcendental to time, is the original state of existence. Wow, that was an eye-opener. That was a eureka moment. And do we experience this? This is the question, yes. The answer is yes. In our deep sleep, the entire material universe disappears, right? Our body, we don't have consciousness of our body, our personality disappears, and more importantly, time disappears. So here it is, he discovered that substratum that is neither matter nor energy and not impacted by time is embedded in us. But we get, as soon as we get back to our bodily state, we forget that state. That was a profound eureka moment for me too. And that state is infinite possibilities, transcendental to our four-dimensional space. It's much more operating at a different level. So we call it this state of this divine state called infinite possibilities and potentialities. So our universe is a unique universe with three-dimensional space and time, but there is something far beyond that state. And sometimes we're caught up with our body and time that we are unable to escape and become transcendental to this. And so he discovered this. He said, wow, this is what every scripture has been talking about, right? So he's now set the pace for this philosophy and the foundation for this philosophy. So he shows that how did it emerge? So how did our universe emerge? This is the fascinating part. So he's defined this substratum, which is transcendental space and time. Now he goes to the state of how our universe began. And this is where you will see in the I God book, it maps it out. So he says, from this substratum called Irul, infinite state of existence, our universe was one of the many, many possibilities with four-dimensional, three-dimensional space and time, and most important, the laws that govern our universe. So he calls this the primordial atom. And it's packed with energy and that expansion that took place. So this is what Swamiji calls nothing, something by time, chance. Nothing means no thing, neither matter nor energy nor time was there. From there emerged our own universe by chance. By chance here means he's talking about the possibility and probability, because when we say infinite possibility, one of the possibilities is our universe. Many, many possibilities. So he speaks about this, so he lays down this concept. And can you imagine, he spoke about this in the 50s and he was thinking about it in the 40s and the 50s, and he was conceptualizing. And that is the time scientists who are exploring this were also thinking about this kind of thinking, right? Is this how did our universe begin, the Big Bang Theory, and the whole host. But this Mahan never went to any of the universities, but he discovered the secret within himself. That's why he says, look, I discovered this on my own, but this is what science is saying. If you study science, you'll see that my thought and the scientific thought converges, right? And he shows how this nothing, this transcendental state, created this three-dimensional space and time, and how it emerged through our universe. And that primordial atom led to our entire universe, which scientists today say is about 13.8 billion years, right? And that cosmic intelligence, whatever you call it, which is transcendental, is a spark that is embedded in everything in this universe, from atoms to molecules to more complex things, into complex beings to planets, including our being. So the DNA of that is embedded in us. And that's what he was searching for. That's what the scientists are trying to get to. So we see this push towards, trying to understand this cosmic intelligence. But, and that's why he says, everything's an expansion, manifestation, and evolution of God. And this I God premise is about that everything in this universe has the divine DNA. But for us to discover that, it requires a vehicle to get there. It's how, for us to understand the microbes, we need electron microscopy. For us to understand what's out there in the universe, we need telescope. To understand the divine spark in us, we need that inner scope. And that inner scope, he says, I've got to develop this inner scope. Like how scientists develop the microscope or the telescope to discover the microcosm and the macrocosm, he now starts thinking, how do I discover the divine spark in me? Right? And if I am able to discover the divine spark in me, I'll be able to cognize the divine spark everywhere. Right? And this is the journey that he took. And you'll see that that inner scope is nothing but his meditational technique. So the inner scope became that meditation, that tool and the technique that he designed. So the entire universe unraveled 13.8 billion years, and he knew this, and he explained this very, very clearly in his I Got philosophy. Here's a more scientific kind of reasoning that I gave to his. And the primordial light or the spark is embedded in everything in this universe, including all of us. And it emanates as our life force or Kundalini force. So he says, if I can wire the mind to be able to cognize that, we touch the spark of divinity. And this is where he says, I need a technique or tool to get there. And this is where he read, I mean, he thought about it, and he realized that the journey to discover that has to come from within, which has to be transcendental to the body and the energy field. And this is where he started that vibration that his guru taught him. He intensified like a scientist, refining his instruments, and the instruments was nothing but his mind. And his religious practice, using rational thought and scientific approach, he was able to come to the abode of that self, the spiritual self, and he saw the convergence between them. And that's how the technique of meditation, that helped him to discover his own spiritual compass that guided him to this divine spark. And this meditation technique is very unique in the sense that it teaches someone there's three stages. The first stage is how he teaches to raise that Kundalini. And there are a few things that one needs to do to be able to practice this. And I've mapped out in the, Mahan has shown in the I Got book, and if you refer to the YouTube clips, it shows very, very clearly. You need a guru to be able to show you this path. The first stage actually is about raising the Kundalini. It gives you a more focused mind, very sharp mind, like an electron microscope or a telescope, that helps the brain to parts of your brain, the prefrontal cortex and others, to expand, the neural connectivity to become more integrated, and you see that the ability to think deeper and much more wider improves, so your concentration improves. The second stage is actually bringing down the energy. The first stage, you do it for 2 weeks, and the second stage, you do it for about 6 days, and Swamiji shows how to bring it down, descending step. This is very important for the health of the body and the overall well-being. Very fascinating is that many people have spoken about awakening, but nobody speaks about Mahan is the only one that shows the descending step, how to bring that energy back through the spinal cord to strengthen the body. And the last step is actually after that 6 days, Swamiji shows how to bring that force to the top eye, and that ignites certain parts of the brain, which I'll speak about, that helps you to get a much more blissful feeling. So this gives you a more universal, connected state. And what is really fascinating is that while I was practicing this, I was experiencing this, but I could not explain what's the rationale and the scientific reasoning for this. And I started delving very much in many of the literatures of meditation. And there was so much literature that shows that when you practice meditation, parts of your neural connectivity becomes stronger and deeper and more connected. Parts of your brain becomes more nourished. It helps you with your concentration, helps you, remember the brain controls many parts of the body and the organs and the metabolism. When that's harmonized, your body becomes more healthy. Your brain health improves, body health improves, your concentration improves, you become more energetic, your stamina improves. And when you do the third stage, parts of your brain that generate certain hormones gives you a more relaxed feeling, more blissful feeling. You don't feel stressed. You feel more kind of happy. And there are, happy hormones that are generated in your body that you always feel positive and so on. And you'll see that in many of my discussions in the YouTube clips. So these three stages were the inner scope that Swamiji designed and developed to be able to touch that spiritual, substratum that is transcendental to space and time. Very, very fascinating for me as I was reading and experiencing this myself and being able to give a rational understanding of what this practice is. And here are some of the initiation techniques that, courtesy of Mahan's family, Guru Nodin shared with some of the photographs. And here are some of the first stage initiation that Swamiji showed. He initiated many people from different parts of the world, in Southeast Asia, Europe, India, and so on. Here again, some of the first stage initiation. This was taken in Southeast Asia, and this is in India where he showed the first stage. Um, and you'll see the third stage initiation where the top eye. And again, we see that some of the things go back to 50s and the 60s. And on his travel, he initiated many, many people. Here again, there was initiation of people, monks and other people of religious order learning to practice these three stages to power their brain and their mind to get a much more deeper understanding of their own spiritual personality. So we see that the three stages of initiation are so important. That is Swamiji's technique to discover that substratum, the divine substratum that is embedded in our DNA. So he writes, when he got this knowledge, he writes, wow, this eureka moment, he says, seeking the inaccessible God by ceaseless subjective and inward search. So it was not an object-oriented thing, but as an inward subjective search. He said, I realized within myself God in its entirety. So what he realized is that the divine spark that is formless, dimensionless, transcendental to space and time, he discovered that. And when he discovered that, the mind's lens became more divine, that everything he saw was that divinity. And this is the essence of the I God philosophy. And you see that when you practice this, there's a transformation that happens in us, the brain chemistry changes, the body chemistry changes, our own personality starts changing, and you see that our thoughts become more divine, our words become more divine, our actions become more divine, and you become more peaceful and calm. And this is what you were talking about, that connection between, the practice, the philosophy, and actual experience one gets. So now that he's got the tool, he's got the philosophy, he's got the tool, he's now going to show how one peers into God in the form of our divine human consciousness. So for me, that's really fascinating. He's written this, and I try to put it in a picture form to describe this journey. He starts off with this, whole experience of this this formless, dimensionless, higher order continuum, transcendental to our space and time. And then he says, okay, from this emerge vibrations. And today we know this is what scientists call string theory, vibrations. And this is why Swamiji sometimes say that, whenever things, unarvu gavanipa, focus on that cosmic symphony in all of us. This is beautifully written in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita means Bhagavan's Gidam. That means the divine vibration, right? So from that higher order, we got that our universe, which is vibrating, in the form of, this divine spark. And that led to life. you know, and we see that this is what scientists call quarks and all those things. So the vibration leads to that spark, Jodi, the light, you know, and as a matter of fact, light is what we call photon, the vibration of, the various uh, electrons and so on. That you have electrons, protons, all those things that science have been speaking about. But where did it emerge? From this formless substratum, and there's a stage of evolution that takes place. Swamiji was describing this in his book, in a kind of simple way, and that protons, electrons, and neutrons formed into atoms and more complex beings. And one of the complex beings is human beings. And he shows this footprints of that he ruled this higher order, this cosmic symphony that is embedded in all of us. So he now knows, okay, we've got this cosmic symphony that is behind all this. How do I trace it back? And the tracing back is what he needed, that inner scope, that like how scientists needed the telescope to look at the universe, or the microscope to look at the most minutest thing. So Swamiji now say, I've got the tools now, I'm going to peer within me to discover that divinity. And then when he discovered that, he realized, wow, from the bodily level, I can go right up to the vibration, that Kundalini. And if I peered further, I discovered that Yennol Nan Arindel, he says, within me, I've discovered a divinity. So it's his way of that inner scope leading him back to that divine force of God. This is the essence of I God. And for me, this is really an eureka moment, because he was trying to discover who this God was. He was practicing many things, and an elderly person showed him that a particular way. He perfected it, he researched it, he designed a tool to get there, and he developed a philosophy, a hypothesis, a conjecture, whatever you call it. He then developed an experimental tool for him to discover this. What an amazing journey that he took. And he made it very simple for all of us, right? So this is the journey why for me he's one of the greatest teachers, because most people have written theoretically, but he actually shows the philosophy, the practice, and the way to get there. So for me, this 3 stages of meditation is much more deeper. And in this picture, he says that in the flames of the tapas, or awareness, I attain my own self. Now he's unifying the philosophy, the practice, and the self and the divinity, which is, the unifying force. I wanted to show you, in my own research, I started looking at, okay, he's got the first stage, second stage, third stage. What is happening in our mind? What is happening to our brain? As I started, being in a university environment, a scientific environment, I said, look, let's study this a little bit more carefully. And I realized that the first stage initiation, there are 12 parts of our brain. Of course, there are more things. I'm just highlighting this. That parts of our brain starts making the structural changes. Maybe not in the short term, over a longer period of time, we see our neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers, starts becoming more and more harmonized, more integrated. That sense energy, the vibrations, it helps cell growth. And you see that the first stage helps the frontal lobe growth, cognitive ability, prefrontal cortex, which are rational thinking, our pituitary gland, which is actually controls the master gland, which controls many parts, and our stem cell and spinal cord become so charged. So there's a physiological change that is happening when you practice that first stage. And that is going to start, impacting the state of our brain, which is the hardware, and eventually impact our mind, which is the software and the intellect. So very fascinating. The same thing with the second stage. We see the second stage now, neurotransmitters become more stronger, impacts the larger part of the brain, the whole stem cell, because the energy is flowing down all the way back. So the pathway is now open, the highway is open now for the flow. And the third stage, you know, has fires up parts of your brain that gives you a much more kind of integrated flow of energy that, helps with movement, understanding, speech, listening, and you see that you become more quieter, your mind becomes more, quietude, and your listening ability, focus, all these things starts taking place. And you see that you don't waste your time frivolously and so on. So there's a physiological change that's happening in the brain chemistry that has a change in your bodily chemistry, and you see that you become more alert, more energetic, more happy, and they say that the happy hormones like dopamine and other things become more and more harmonized. So, so we see this, this energy that has an impact on all of us. And I want to go back to this the next phase of our discussion, which covered all this. Uh, but what is really fascinating is the following, right? So we covered this. There's a physiological change, but that has an impact on all of us. And as we practice meditation, something very interesting happens to us. What happens is that as we practice this meditation, our practice of introspection, contemplation, reflection intensifies, right? So I always say sometimes, people say, well, Guru, I find it hard to meditate. I said, that's the time you have to sit down quietly, relax, meditate. As you do those micro level change over time, it intensifies. So practice improves, right? And when our practice improves, we see that, our purpose in life starts changing. We start saying, oh, okay, this is what I cannot not to do it. Most people neglect it. They say, well, I have no time for this now. You see that the mind gravitates. So this is the journey that I'm going to take. The passion for life, passion for living, you don't complain anymore. You just say, okay, I'm going to give my best. And this is the third thing that happens. You become more patient. Patience, calm, cool, unperturbed. I said, like what Mahan, perseverance, that steadfast, that really, no matter what, nothing is going to shift me from this journey. So you acquire the spiritual compass that guides you. There are times in life you get, your path changes or things that, disrupts you, but the compass guides you back and you become more persistent. Like Mahan, Tamil Solom, Vidapadiyaga, you do this. And that leads to that illumination, that Paranjodi, that divine, every moment becomes divine. There's no moment that, and that is why I said that somebody asked Swamiji, how many hours do you meditate? Swamiji said, Swamiji is meditation, meditation is Swamiji. What you are saying is that I am in a connected state always. And you know how wonderful it is to be in that connected state, from the time you are in deep sleep, you're in the connected state. When you wake up, you're in the connected state. As you progress and go to sleep, you're always in the connected state. When we do that, whatever we do becomes divine, awesome, spectacular. As a student, as a professional, as a householder, as a community leader, including as we age gracefully. Right? We don't complain. Yes, body will go through all kinds, but our spirit is still always lifted. And this is the inspiring part of this great Mahan. So as I said, the benefits is that, we see, we become more peaceful. Now you see that the practice structurally, strengthen the hardware, the brain, the body, to become more focused. We become more inquiring, we don't waste our time, we always want to know the truth, our stress level goes down, our memory level improves so much, and that's a topic on its own, as our memory improves, we store our memory becomes like a well sorted library, pieces of information that we experience, and it's sorted, and eventually when we initiate it, the information connects and gives us a much more amazing experience, understanding, awareness, discovery. That's the power of this Mahan's teachings. Reliability, we trust ourselves. We know that we can do things on our own. We know that there is nothing that we cannot do. Agility of the mind is able to become agile no matter what the circumstances are. We're not impacted by anything. We nurture compassion and kindness. Our body becomes more healthier. Uh, Powerful mind, nothing can shake that mind. Our intellect becomes more sharper. We always are in the connected state. And most importantly, we get this universal outlook on life and this enlightened state, right? You're always in that connected state. And ultimately, one realizes that awareness of the self, the spark of divinity that is embedded. That is exactly what Mahan started off this journey as an 11-year-old boy asking this question and pursued this intensively, discovered this knowledge, simplified this knowledge, and showed the world how to do this, no matter what your circumstances, no matter where you come from, in different walks of life. And we celebrate this Mahan. So I say that this Mahan showed us how to live a wow life, wow, amazing life, and what does that wow means for me? you know, uh, this really an awesome feeling of being alive and experiencing the divinity. What does that mean? For me, that wow life is actually world class. That means that you stand out, right? That pace setting and trailblazing. And that's the quality I saw in this great Mahan. Many people talked about this Kundalini and many people talked about God philosophy, but here is a Mahan that was completely different from others. He tried to discover, he discovered, he had this philosophy of God, which is transcendental to many, many different fields of studies and teachings. He had this universal concept. He designed and developed a technique to touch the substratum. He simplified this through his own intensive research and scientific pursuit. He made it very simple so that everybody can practice. That's a trailblazer. That's a pace setter, right? Not like everybody who following others, but he was a trailblazer. For me, that is an important quality that if we want to succeed in life, that quality is Mahan has left behind. The second aspect is that in the vow is outstanding. Outstanding in the sense that he had that rigor, but more importantly, once he had the rigor, he simplified this to make it easier for everybody to benefit from it. So opportunity creating, he created that opportunity for everybody to acquire the amazing experience called life, creating opportunities. Many people, when they get the goodness, they don't share it with others. But here it is, he got this knowledge and he shared it with everybody, creating opportunities for everyone to walk his path as a Mahan. And the last one is venerable. The philosophy, the teachings, the practice, and integrating into our day-to-day life transforms us, transforms our physiology, our brain, our mind, our intellect, in our body, become transformative and transform our way of life to live a spectacular and impactful life, like how this Mahan was. So for me, he is the greatest teacher. And, imbibing this, it teaches us to live a wow life. Stop complaining, stop, making excuses, just picking up this knowledge, connecting this knowledge, and touching this divine core that is embedded in all of us, through this I God philosophy, through this meditational practice, through the ability of our mind to expand and engulf this substratum, this divine substratum, to live a wow and spectacular life. This is what this great Mahan has showed me. And over the many years of practicing, you know, life has really been an awesome journey. So I hope that all of you all would, learn this practice, put it to practice, and kind of live an enriched and enlightened life. So, as a gratitude to him and to his teachings, so I've devoted a lot of my time and effort to highlight his work. And through our Sabai, the Paranjali Paripurna Sabai, we have had an opportunity to develop some of his teachings. That's how Mahan, when he came into this practice, it was very difficult, very abstract. Through his innovation and scientific discovery, he made it very simple, the philosophy and the meditational technique, to impart to everybody. Now it's our responsibility, standing on his shoulders, to make it simpler in a kind of a visual way. Today we have all the technology and tools to be able to impart this knowledge to everyone, particularly to the youth, particularly to the people who have many challenges. Even though we have gone through many development, people still have a lot of challenges. So here it is that you can download this YouTube clips. We now have close to about, I think about almost close to 175 or 178 YouTube clips that takes us through the I got philosophy right up to the practice. And it'll continue to build up this library of Mahan's I got philosophy. And I hope that all of you all will be able to access it and, research on it to discover your own inner scope as how Mahan has done. So with that, Sandosham to all of you all, and I'm happy to take any questions. And this forum, this online forum that we have, and all our satsangs are devoted to, show the greatness of this Mahan's work, and hopefully you discover the greatness. Sandosham to all of you.